Welcome back to Fuel Up Classic, and a big welcome to everyone who has recently subscribed to the channel. It really does mean a lot, and I can't thank you all enough. The channel's growing at a nice rate, and I hope you're all enjoying the videos that I'm putting out. But today's video is all about the MGC GT. Now, chances are, if you're into your classic cars, everyone recognises an MGB GT. It's probably one of the most iconic British classic cars, but its six-cylinder sibling never really gained any limelight, and it sold in such tiny numbers compared to the B. And I think they've been long since overlooked, but now is their time, and I think it's time to start looking at these cars as, and I think I'm not stretching the truth too much here, these cars really are a bit of a baby Aston Martin. Now, bear with me on that comment, because I will try and put across why I think these are a bit of an unappreciated gem. And those that know these cars and those that have had them for a long time, they know how good they really are. So let's take a closer look at the MGB's six-cylinder sibling, the CGT. Now, it may look very similar to the MGB GT, but the C really does differ. It's quite a unique car, and don't forget just how rare these are. They only built about 9,000 of them in total, of which it was about a 50-50 split between GTs and Roadsters, this of course being a GT. But look a little bit closer, you start to see differences to the B. First things first, it sits on 15-inch wheels. It just sits a little bit taller, a little bit prouder than a B. And I think that makes the car look a little bit bigger, a little bit more purposeful. That power bulge on the aluminium bonnet as well kind of adds to that. It feels a bit more muscular than a B. And there's good reason for that, because what they shoehorned in to this car is quite impressive. A 3-litre straight six unit. It deserves that we have a closer look at that before we take it out for a drive. So let's do exactly that. And remember as well that the MGC is very, very different in how it's constructed from about the scuttle panel forward. Quite a lot of unique parts going on, a different suspension setup as well to a B, torsion bar on this one. But let's have a look at the engine, because it's quite an impressive thing shoehorned in there, and then we'll take it out for a drive. Under that lovely MGC sculptured bonnet, you've got probably one of the most controversial engines ever fitted to an MG. In period, it was slammed as being far too heavy, and actually when you look at the numbers, you can kind of see where they were getting at. It's still a full 209 pounds heavier than a 4-cylinder B-Series engine. And a lot of people think that the engine was nicked from the Austin Healey sports car, but it wasn't. It was actually derived from the Austin 3-litre saloon. And they did quite a lot of engineering work to make it more suitable for the C. It's a 7-main bearing engine. It's very free revving, and it's actually a very hardy and strong unit. You're never going to get away from the fact there's a lot of weight over the front of this car. In standard form, you're looking at 145 brake horsepower. That makes this car good for 120 miles an hour. Even back in the 1960s and 70s, companies like Downton Engineering, they were getting 200 plus brake horsepower out of these engines with mild tunes to the cylinder head and that sort of thing. You can go for a triple carb conversion as well, as opposed to the standard fitment of twin HS6 carburetors, which is what this car has. You can get this car with a 3-speed automatic gearbox as well, but when it comes down to it all, the proof is in the driving. So let's take it out for a drive and see how the car performs. So I'm out on the open road with the MGC now, and I know I made reference to this car, and I know it's a little bit of a stretch, but I do think there's an argument in this that This car is a baby Aston Martin, and I say that because of three things. One, look at the styling of it. It's a beautifully styled car with all those lovely 1960s features that I genuinely do think this is one of the prettiest cars to come out of Britain in the 1960s. It's only on sale for 2 years, or thereabouts. 1967 to 69, there were a few cars, select cars, that were sold after that by University Motors, but largely on sale just for 2 years. It's a very rare car. And of course, you've got that 3-litre 6-cylinder engine up front, and it really suits the type of car that the C is. It's much more GT than sports car. And I think people have to get their head around that, because it looks like an MGB in so many ways. They think it's going to be this little reasonably lightweight sports car that you can chuck around, and it isn't that really. It's a grown-up, refined gentleman's tourer, and I think it looks and drives almost as well as any Aston Martin of the era. I know that's a bold claim, but let's consider you can pick up one of these for 15 grand. 20 grand gets you a really good one. 25 gets you an exceptional example. So to call it a baby Aston Martin for a baby price of an Aston Martin, I don't think we're stretching the truth too much there. But let's talk about now. What's it actually like to be behind the wheel of an MGC? The interior is very similar to a B, so whether you like that or not, but I don't find it an unpleasant place to be. It's a lovely, simple dashboard, Smith's gauges, this beautiful thin-rimmed steering wheel, and it's huge, absolutely huge, but suits the car so well and feels good in your hands. It's 1960s motoring. But what is so evident with this car is it wants to just sit at 70, 80 miles an hour for hours on end. You could do long distances in this car very, very easily. Now, in period, when this car was launched, I don't think it's unfair to say that there has never been a more controversial MG. It was absolutely slammed by the motoring press. Now, it actually came to light that those press cars were delivered with underinflated tyres and that sort of thing, which didn't help when they came to conclusions like pig-like understeer, slow, unresponsive, thirsty. It really didn't get a good time, this car, when it was launched. But all of those things have been put to bed now. They're for the history books. The MGC can easily be pepped up and modified to keep up with the best of them. That 6-cylinder engine can more than capable of taking 200 brake horsepower very reliably if you need to. But this car is in standard tune and it drives exceptionally well. It's about 50% more power than an MGB, and believe me, it's noticeable. Might not be dramatic, but ooh, listen to that. That's a lovely noise. And before you know it, I'm doing motorway speeds. Oh God, it's quite good actually. Quite surprised at how this car gets down the road. And the handling, well, modern tyres, different suspension bushes, higher quality things like that can transform the car, but it will never be a sports car. This is a grand tourer, and it is much happier out on the open road, where really it's only wind noise through these seals here on the quarter lights that let you know that you're doing 70, 80 with ease. Economy wise, it does suffer a little bit though, about 20 miles per gallon on average, so fairly thirsty old beast really for a small car. But I know it's a little bit corny to say it, it is smiles per miles with a car like this, and what you're driving is one of MG's rarest cars. As I said, less than 9,000 built, about 4,500 GT variants, and I think they're a bargain. Pick one of these up for 20 odd grand and use it, enjoy it. I doubt you're going to lose any money. And those that know are going to give you a nod of respect because they recognise that it's a C. And those that don't are just going to think you've got a lovely British classic sports car that looks fantastic. And you'll be driving it with a grin from ear to ear, I guarantee you. As ever, I always try and show you a great example on the channel. This car has just had over £20,000 spent on it, so it's a real good one. But it rides very, very well. I thought with this car being a torsion bar suspension, it would ride fairly harshly, it would be a bit jittery. It isn't. It soaks up the bumps really well. It's far better than my tired old MGB, that's for sure. So I've got a couple of twisty little bits of road up here, so let's try and see what all the criticism was about this being a big nose heavy understeery machine, because I'm carrying 60 miles an hour through this corner now and it's holding on no problems at all. Yes, you can feel the weight up front there, and there's a lot of weight up front, but it's getting on with the job. The brakes are bigger on a C as well, so if I servo assist as well, if I bring it to a stop, nothing wrong with that at all. By the 1960s standards, that's pretty respectable. It's just a lovely place to be behind the wheel. I could get in this and drive this to Scotland tomorrow, flick the overdrive down, we're doing 60 miles an hour, it's barely touching 1500 RPM. That sets this car a world away from an MGB. I'm really impressed with the car. I don't want to go into a big buying guide style of video like I usually would, because most things that are relevant when buying an MGC are covered if you look at the many, many great videos out there on buying an MGB. They rust in the same spots. The only thing to take away from this video, if you are thinking about buying one and it needs some work, is just remember that quite a lot of what's going on underneath this car, both mechanically and also that front setup, is unique to a C. So don't always expect that parts supply will be as plentiful. You have to remember this is a rare car. Most things, being an MG, are available, but restoration costs on one of these can climb at quite an alarming rate, especially when you think about an MGB where pretty much every part or panel is available very easily. Not quite so the case with the C, but we'll leave it there. I just think they're well worth a second look if you're thinking about a really competent classic car that you can use and enjoy. I can't really see that many downsides, apart from not expecting it to be a out-and-out sports car, because it isn't that, and a bit of fairly thirsty to run it regularly, that's for sure. But if you can live with those things, I think you could have a wonderful car for not a huge amount of money, and I think you can call it, with pride, a baby Aston Martin.